Hello everyone, and I hope all of you are doing well and ready for another exciting meeting at the Future Leaders Gavel Club. My name is Angelina, and it is an honor to be your interim club president, and I would like to officially call this meeting to order. I would also like to extend a warm welcome to all of our guests, and we sincerely hope that you'll enjoy and learn from this experience. The Future Leaders Gavel Club is a Toastmasters club that is open to middle and high school students, in which members are empowered to develop communication and leadership skills, resulting in greater self confidence and personal growth. Usually each meeting would have three parts. The first part of our meeting would be the prepared speech section, in which members would take the time to prepare a speech and deliver it to the club. The second part of our usually meetings are the table topics sections where members and guests can participate to practice and improve their impromptu speaking skills by answering questions given by the table topics master with 1 to 2 minute responses. And the final part of our usual meetings is the evaluation portion, where speech evaluators provide feedback on the prepared speeches. Additionally, the functionaries will deliver their reports to help everyone enhance their public speaking skills. Now, I would like to hand it over to Caleb to introduce our special guest speaker for today.
Thank you so much, Angelina. Now, before we get started with the workshop today, I would like to kindly remind everyone to please turn on your cameras and stay muted during the session. This will help the mayor feel more connected to the group and makes the workshop more engaging and interactive for everyone. During the Q&A portion, when Mr. Calaycay opens the floor for questions, please raise your virtual hand if you would like to ask something, and be sure to keep your camera on while speaking, as this allows for a more personal and meaningful exchange. And now I'm excited to introduce our workshop speaker. Mr. Corey Calaycay is currently the mayor of Claremont, California, serving his 6th term on the Claremont City Council, and has previously served 3 terms as mayor. A lifelong Claremont resident, he earned a degree in business administration from Loyola Marymount University and was first elected to the council in 2005, after running for office as early as age 19. In addition to his service at the local level, Mr. Calaycay has spent over a decade working for the California State Legislature, serving people across more than 30 communities in Southern California. He currently chairs 2 public commissions and serves on regional boards focused on transportation, energy, and library services. With his extensive knowledge in both local government and regional service, Mr. Calaycay brings valuable insight into civic leadership and public service. Please help me welcome Mr. Corey Calaycay.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And I want to thank Caleb for the kind invitation to join you here today. I guess I can begin just by talking about my early experiences progressing to, as far as speaking experiences, presenting before individuals, and then how that progressed into where I am today. I grew up here in Claremont. As of this year, I've lived here for 51 years. I attended Foothill Country Day School for elementary school, and then I went on to the web schools for high school. When I was at Foothill, Mr. Webb, Hal Webb, the son of Dr. Thompson Webb, who founded Webb School, was our headmaster. And one of the things that he did is he would have all of the classes every year put on a play. And so at the time, I didn't really appreciate the purpose of the exercise, but he was certainly giving us that opportunity to present before people, to be performing before an audience. The one nice thing, of course, in those experiences is you have a script, and so you have your lines. You're prepared. You know what to say. In 8th grade, during 8th grade year, each of our classmates had to actually choose a Bible verse, and then at chapel in the morning go in front of the school and read a Bible verse and lead a discussion in regards to that. So those were early experiences where in elementary school we were being conditioned to be able to present before people, to speak before people. And then the same thing was true in high school, although it wasn't a required area of study, but I chose to be involved in theater at Webb School. I was in Sound of Music. I was in The Crucible. How to Succeed in Business Without Trying were a few of the productions. And so that continued my opportunity to present before people, to perform before people, and to you'd assume build a comfort level to being able to present in public. As things turned out, when I graduated high school, I became interested in local politics. So I wasn't too much older than all of you when I decided actually to run for the first time for Claremont City Council. I was 19 years old. And so that really kind of threw me into things, because at that point, there were events where I had to speak before citizens. They scheduled candidates forums where you have to have an opening statement, and then people ask you questions, as you will be asking me questions shortly. You have to be prepared to respond to them, and then have a closing statement. And I have to say, it was kind of taking things to the next level in some cases, because as I mentioned, when you're in school and you're in a play, you are able to have a script and memorize your lines and prepare your lines. But that was an entirely different experience, because many of the responses were impromptu. You didn't have the chance to prepare. You sometimes be asked a question that you might not easily have an answer to, and you had to develop your answer. So that was that started to really kind of ramp up my experience with public speaking. And then maybe, let's see, it was after my first run, I came to know some of the representatives who worked for elected officials in our area. And one individual in particular worked for our county supervisor at the time. It was Supervisor Mike Antonovich, and it was his field deputy, Sarah Flores, who made my acquaintance. And at some point, she saw that I was interested in politics, so she asked me if I'd ever be interested in volunteering in their office. And so I accepted, and the purpose of the work was to basically go out to Eagle Courts of Honor, to go to different ceremonies where people were being recognized, and to present proclamations on behalf of the supervisor. And I did that for the supervisor for a number of months, and then other offices saw I was doing that. So I was approached by at the time, our Congressman David Dreyer, and State Senator Dick Mountjoy, and even our State Assemblyman Bob Margette to do presentations for them. And I got a reputation. And to be very honest with you, even though generally speaking, some of those presentations can be somewhat impromptu, because you need to say things that are specific about the person who's being recognized. You have to, and sometimes you might not get all the information until you arrive at the event. You don't always get information in advance, so you might get a program with a biography of the person and what they did, and you have to kind of quickly put something together to be able to in a dignified manner make a nice presentation to the person. And so I have to admit that even took it to another level. And I remember that I would, even then, as much as I had all those experiences being before people, I'll be very frank, I had my moments of nervousness where I'd get a twitch in my face, and I could feel my face twitching, or sometimes my hand shaking. And it's funny, because there's a young lady who just started for our new state assemblyman, who's doing the same type of work that I was doing. And I saw her at an event recently, and she expressed the same emotions to me, that this is something a little bit different for her. She's doing more of these presentations, and she still has her moments where she gets nervous. And I just had to reassure her that over time, the more you do it, that's really just kind of one of those things. It's like anything. The more you do it, The more you practice, a perfect person. Well, I mean, Caleb is a perfect example, and Alexander, relative to they're both great musicians, and they play different instruments. Caleb plays many different instruments. Alexander plays the piano, but obviously that's not something that happens. You do it once, and you've got to keep going with it. You've got to practice, whether it's an instrument, whether it's sports, and even whether it's speaking. I have to be also direct with you that it at some point too, sometimes before I would go out, I go into the bathroom and practice in front of the mirror and practice practice my presentation. But now I've been doing it for many years. It's since I started, that goes back already upwards 30 years now since my first run for city council. And when once you've been doing it many times, it just kind of becomes second nature. It doesn't mean that you don't take it seriously. It doesn't mean that you kind of take it for granted and just jump head first into things. There's still a level of discipline and applying yourself, and doing some advanced preparation before you give a speech. But also, it's great if you either in a line of work that you really are passionate about, or you're talking about a topic that you're very passionate about, because that helps. It certainly helps you in the way you're conveying the topic. If you feel strongly about it, if it's something that you have some level of experience or knowledge in regards to, you have a much easier time conveying your message, making your point, and making it interesting to people. It becomes more conversational, and that's kind of what I would encourage all of you as you progress in your speaking, whatever speaking events you do, or whatever your career might be, whatever speaking requirements you have as a part of your career, that you start to develop yourself to a point where it becomes a little bit more conversational. And that's where it becomes more interesting to people, as opposed to if you're uncomfortable with it, if you're trying to lecture people, it comes off as such, and people will pick up on that. If you feel strongly about something, if you convey that you have some level of experience and knowledge about the topic on which you're speaking, the audience will pick up on that, and you will be much more successful in your endeavors when you're addressing individuals. So that's just kind of a little bit of background of how I've progressed over the years, starting from elementary school to this point in my life. Of course, now in what I do, I'm speaking all the time, and in many cases, I'll come to an event and somebody will you say to me, "Hey, can you say a few words?" And so I've gotten to a point now where I'm comfortable with that, and I can usually develop a speech relatively quickly without even just even off the cuff. So again, it's just something that comes with doing something over and over again. You can get to the point where, again, you don't take it lightly. You still to a certain extent have it's a discipline. You make when you have the opportunity and you have a planned opportunity to speak, you want to prepare yourself. But in the times that you do prepare yourself, or the times that you're just asked to speak extemporaneously, certainly it makes those times a lot easier. So those are just some thoughts, and again, some of my experience. And so, at this point, I'll open it up if anybody has any specific questions for me, and it certainly can be on this topic, or if there's anything else you want to ask me about, I'm happy to address any other questions you might have.
All right, anyone have any questions to ask Mr. Calaycay at this point? Okay, Natasha is going to be first. And if you have a question, just raise your virtual hand and we'll get to it after the next speaker. Oh, Natasha, I need to interrupt, but it doesn't seem like we can hear you right now.
I thought it was just me, so I'm glad to know it wasn't just me after the bandwidth problem I was having earlier.
Okay, I think she's trying to fix it right now. In the meantime, does anyone have any additional questions? If not, okay. I actually have a question for you. What are some leadership lessons that you've learned as part of being the mayor of a city?
Well, it's interesting because last night we had a somewhat controversial topic, and part of my response to the topic, or in addressing the audience, it involved kind of, again, as I offered my history of my how my speaking started in elementary school to where I am now, even my learning experience being on city council, and I made the point that coming on city council, I had a certain level of experience because I had worked, as you mentioned in my biography, for several state legislators, so I had some familiarity with how government worked, some of the issues. But even there, as we were making policy decisions, there were a lot of new policy matters that were coming up that were kind of it was new territory, things that were new issues that hadn't been addressed before, and we were trying to find ways to address them. And over time, I've really kind of come to learn that you have to be very cautious, because when issues come up, people want to just jump forward and try to find an immediate solution, and just want to plant that flag in the ground that we've tried to address an issue. But then, as time goes by, you look back and you start to find out that there were unintended consequences in the decision that you made. There maybe some elements of it didn't actually address the problem you were trying to address. And again, unintended along the lines of unintended consequences, it can sometimes other problems arise that you didn't think of from what you viewed as a solution to a different problem. And so, really, my evolution of leadership has been learning to try to be thoughtful as we have policy matters come before us, and as we're trying to find solutions, and to try to do my best to think things through and anticipate if something that may fix one problem might create another problem, or might not even end up correcting the problem that we have. It does take some effort, but even there, you also have to try to be you have to think about those things carefully, but yet you can't stall the process. So at some point you do have to move forward, but more importantly, you just have to then watch some of these policy matters as with regards to the solutions you put forward, and kind of monitor them to make sure that the solution that you put forward actually had the effect that you intended, and if not, be prepared to make appropriate modifications. That's the main thing. So sometimes there are some issues that demand an immediate response, and so you try to move as quickly as possible, but as cautiously as possible, to not create a situation where you create other problems that were not intended. So that's probably the greatest lesson I've learned in the 20 years that I've served on city council.
Thank you so much for that response. Now, Natasha, is your audio working now? Maybe you can try.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I was wondering about speaking on topics where you might not be as knowledgeable. I know you said that it makes it a lot easier to talk about something when you're passionate about it, but what about a situation where you don't necessarily get a choice? For example, those award ceremonies you were talking about, how do you usually go about doing those?
Yeah, that's a very great and fair question. Honestly, I enjoy the line of work related to that. I enjoy either representing myself, or, as the case may be in the past, representing state legislators and presenting those proclamations. So it's true, some of the ceremonies may be, maybe a sport that I'm not as familiar with, that somebody excelled in, or something that they did that's not necessarily an area of specific knowledge to me. Again, to the extent that I have information before I go to that type of an event, I try to do some research, so I'm prepared to speak in an educated manner about the activity that the person excelled at, that they're being recognized, for which they're being recognized. But again, just the fact that I enjoy doing that, that sort of thing. It definitely, even then, it's not. I don't find it to be a chore. It's something that I enjoy doing. I don't mind doing the research, and even there, I learn new things in so doing. That's of course part of our growth is, sometimes going outside of our comfort zone and learning about things that we, may not be familiar with. So. But yeah, you do have to, in those cases, if you don't have knowledge, you still can do it, but you do need to do your research, and you may have to practice. Especially if there are there may even be words that you have to use that maybe you don't know how to pronounce, and so you need to go on Google and make sure you know the pronunciation of words that or even people's names. That's another big one. Of course, I have one of the more challenging names. People call me all sorts of different names, and so I'm also very conscious of that as well. Before I go to an event, I try to make sure if I see a name that I'm not totally familiar with and that I'm not 100% certain as to pronunciation, to make sure that I make an inquiry of somebody who knows, so that I pronounce the person's name correctly. That's obviously one of the most important things in any presentation is you don't want to mispronounce the name of the person to whom you're presenting. So. Any other questions? Oh, I see Kevin.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about some of the issues that your city is dealing with and what your proposed solutions that you're working on are for those issues.
That's excellent question. So the issue last night that I brought up pertains to housing, and it's a very complicated issue. I think you all are well aware that real estate is very, very expensive in California. And there's a mindset of our state legislature that if we just allow developers to build more in higher density, and if we lower the standards and have fewer restrictions, that the price of housing is going to come down. And, as we speak, I think people are already observing it. I certainly am getting a lot of feedback from our residents. A lot of them aren't happy with the type of density that's coming to Claremont. It's really not traditional to Claremont. It's really kind of more what you'd experience as you move closer to LA, or maybe like Westwood or LA. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you like that type of development, that's great. You have a choice. There's Westwood, there's LA. But there are a lot of folks who value Claremont because they like the low density feel. They like the feeling of our community. And, some would say that's an elitist thing. I would suggest to them that the fact that they're arguing about it suggests that people of low income also appreciate the environment that's been created here in Claremont. And really, it's, just building more isn't going to solve the housing problem, because one of the challenges with housing is you have a lot of investors who are picking up houses to use as for rental properties and whatnot. And so when people that are trying to buy a house for their family to actually live there, when they're trying to go in to buy a house, and then suddenly there are all these bids and these people are competing. And I've witnessed a lot of this even as recently as a few weeks ago. I'm aware of somebody who was complaining to me about the fact that they had made a offer on a house and then came to find out there were 5 other offers and several of them were cash offers. And that's indicative of investors. And so you can build more, but as long as you have lots of investors out there that are looking to pick up properties, that's going to keep driving up the market. And, another example of a dangerous situation that develops with that in Las Vegas, going back in time, they started building like crazy. They had a lot of people moving to Las Vegas Vegas, but at the same time, there were a lot of folks from California and other places that were picking up second homes or rental properties. And so it was really artificially driving up the market very quickly. And then you may have heard, going back to around 2008, some of you, that might have been around the time some of you were born, but around 2008, we had a situation where they referred to as the housing bubble burst. And, then you had property values falling significantly, and a lot of people, some people got hurt by that. But that's the challenge with the real estate market. That's bigger than just building homes. And the problem is too, some of these legislators are taking contributions from developers, so the developers are influencing the process for their own benefit, not necessarily to solve a problem. And then, of course, we hear competing problems too, because we have a challenge with water, we have a challenge with the electricity grid, and we keep adding more things onto the water system, to electric grid. Where does it all end? And how does that end well? So we're tackling that situation. It's a problem because traditionally that has been one of the important roles of city government, is to decide on local development, and state government is deciding that they know better than we do and our citizens. And so they're setting up processes where if developers go through one of the state processes put in place by state legislation, they can bypass our local process. And so we had one of those last night. We had a lot of frustrated residents that were looking for some concessions from a developer, and basically, the answer was that if it didn't meet certain criteria, where the bar is extremely high to try to file any kind of concern about the development, to push any kind of change through this process. If you can't meet that bar, you basically can't stop the project. And if you try to stop the project, then they can take you to court and sue you. And these days, a lot of the way these state laws are written, cities don't stand a chance. They try to challenge these things, and the courts rule against them. And then they're facing, it could be hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in damages, to rectify a situation. And you don't have the development turnout as you would like even then. So housing is a situation, and related to housing, of course, homelessness is also a problem. But, again, they try to tie homelessness to housing, and that's also more complicated than that, because a number of people who are, unhoused have mental illness, and others just, they choose not to subscribe to our way of, our conventional way of life. They prefer not having to have responsibilities, having to worry about paying bills. They like this camping lifestyle, if you will. And so even when they're offered housing, a lot of them reject it. And the way our laws are written, we can offer them housing, we can offer them programs and assistance, but they don't have to take it. And even if they have mental illness, that, by any other definition would mean that they probably aren't in the best position to make decisions for themselves. It doesn't matter. If they say no, we can't force them to take the services. So those are probably two of the biggest challenges that we're facing right now as a city. And then another one too, crime, of course. Those are kind of in the top three issues that we face as a city, trying to protect our citizens from crime, trying to deal with unhoused, and then trying to deal with these state laws as it relates to addressing the high cost of housing. I see Alexander has his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, Mr. Mayor, about what law or other piece of legislature that you were involved in or that you helped pass do you think was really influential in Claremont, and it really helped with some of these issues?
Well, I can talk about a piece of legislation that I was involved in that I think is easy for people to connect with. It's probably not fair to raise it to the level of something that was like life-changing in terms of some of these issues, but I guess it can offer an example. So again, probably before all of you were born, there was no 210 freeway that came through Claremont. The freeway used to end at Laverne. And back then, right now, when you go down the 210, you come to the 57. Actually, back in the day, the 210 went down to the 10, that part of the 57 that goes from the 210 to the 10 was also the 210, and the 57 started south of the 210. And so then there was a new freeway that kind of there's like a dogleg 30 that ended, that was supposed to be the freeway that came through Claremont. And at one point in time, I was at a meeting representing my legislator in Ranch Cucamonga, and a topic came up amongst all the elected officials there about how confusing this was, that you had the 30 and the 210 and the 57, and why doesn't that all get fixed? Because it's going to be confusing to people when the freeway goes through. And so I took that back to our office and shared it with our staff. And so our legislative director contacted the legislative director for another elected official who represented the Ranch Cucamonga area. And the two offices, our office and their office, came together and sponsored a bill that renumbered the freeway 210 all the way to Redlands, and then brought the 57 all the way up to where it connects at the 210 there by Glendora. It was probably one of the fastest pieces of legislation I've ever seen. It was really very non-controversial, and we got it through probably within about a 4-month period. It was pretty amazing. But that was one I can specifically claim a hand in, because I brought that to the office and pushed the case, and we got that through in a matter of months. And so every so often when I drive down the 210, I get a little smile on my face, because I remember that was part of something in which I was involved. But again, not earth-shattering, solving the housing crisis. That again, those issues are a lot more difficult, and that's the problem. Is people look at it from just one vantage point and think they're going to just solve it one way, and it's not always that easy to do, because it really would come down to how do you regulate. How would you regulate investors? People do have a right to invest. There are property rights, but I mean, could you have a requirement that basically says, if somebody buys a house, they need to live in it for at least 3 years before they can start renting it, to kind of set a standard to encourage or to give a first opportunity to people who are buying homes to live in them themselves, before you're competing with investors coming in just trying to pick up houses for rentals for income purposes. So, as an example, those would be kind of the things that I've been trying to put forward when we've been having these meetings, to encourage the legislature to be, thinking about it in a balanced perspective. I mean, it's okay to encourage building, but also, don't mandate it. Provide some tools that are incentives that the cities can use to help advance the process in a positive way and a constructive way that doesn't circumvent also citizen participation, which is a problem with the way they're doing it now. They're basically just dictating it, and there's not really a process to give people, I think a balanced opportunity to participate. So I hope that answers your question. Howard.
So as stated before, you said there are for lack of better words, developers try to bribe such senators or mayors. Have you ever been in that situation yourself?
I appreciate the question. I think we have to be careful because if they are actually bribing, that is a crime, and there are legislators and even people who have bribed legislators who have gone to jail. But certainly they give campaign contributions. So they influence legislators. That's not necessarily a quid pro quo, meaning that they specifically said, here, I'm giving you money, pass this bill, but I'm your friend, here's some money. And, and then, the legislator finds out this is something to their benefit. Well, and they gave me money, so I'm kind of feeling an obligation because I took their money to do something for them. So that's really kind of more the thing is perhaps a good trait of human nature, a desire to be loyal to people. It gets a little twisted there to the point that, just because somebody helped you with money, you feel this obligation to pass a bill that may be kind of favoring, a certain group of people. And in my case, to avoid that, I would say in the last 2 elections, I only took contributions from Claremont residents or from small business people. I did not take from larger businesses like your Southern California Edison's or your Doubletree Hotel. But certainly some of our small, like Viva Madrid, the owner of Viva Madrid was a contributor of mine. And she also happens to be a resident even then. But it was only Claremont residents. I even had, it was mentioned I serve on some regional boards, and there was one of my fellow commissioners who lives in LA sent me a check, and I returned it to her, and I said, I really appreciate it, but I've made a commitment that I'm only soliciting funds from my residents. I'm not taking them from outside the community, and so that's been my approach to trying to avoid being influenced by organizations or large corporations, certainly developers. Eliana.
What is the best part about being mayor, and what is the worst part about being mayor?
The best part of being mayor is opportunities like this. I enjoy my community. I love my community. I love interacting with people. I love trying to inform them of what's going on and trying to make them aware so that they can be, well-informed voters and very active community members. So this sort of engagement I deeply enjoy. Meetings last night where it gets a little tense and I have to get kind of tough. We had a meeting a couple meetings ago. It's a business meeting, so we have rules. We try to put those rules out in advance in terms of how public comment is held, that we allow each speaker 3 minutes. At each time there's a comment segment. They can speak one time, they can't speak twice. If they spoke once for 3 minutes, if there's another speaking opportunity later in the meeting, they can speak again, but they can't speak again during that existing speaking opportunity. And we had one lady who was incensed by some speakers that came after her, and so she felt this need to get up. And I had to tell her, "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but you already spoke before." And I was gaveling her. She would not stop coming forward, and she proceeded to hijack the meeting. So I basically had to call a recess, and the council had to walk out so the police chief could engage her and inform her that if she was going to remain in the meeting, she needed to adhere to our code of conduct, or she wouldn't be allowed to stay. So those moments are unpleasant. It's not nice to have those kind of run-ins. And sometimes when you have you have a meeting where emotions are running high, people feel strongly about things. It can get a little bit challenging, but you have to try to be firm but professional and not disrespectful too. I try to say it in as nice a way as possible, but I try to be firm when somebody does something like that, but without getting in, degenerating into mean-spirited comments or in the worst case, as some people do, cuss and that sort of idea. Just try to stay away from that. We try to be professional in our meetings. Do we have any other questions? Oh, Caleb?
What advice would you have for anyone who's interested in going into politics, and what do you think is the best way to get into politics?
Great question. So how many of you are at Claremont High School? Okay, Alex, any others? Okay, I don't know, are any of you at Webb? No? Are you from other towns? Okay, so for those of you who are in Claremont, and I guess it's only maybe one of you, we have a teen committee. I'm not sure what Upland has, but actually this would be a great opportunity for you, Alexander, to consider if you have an opportunity to get on the teen committee. That's actually an official city committee, and it's important because it's supposed to engage our youth in Claremont to try to assure that we're considering their thoughts in our programming, and even trying to come up with ways to get students more engaged in volunteerism and being active in the community. And even aside from the teen committee, I know there's an Interact Club. And even if you're in other communities, Rotary has an Interact Club. Kiwanis, I believe, has the Key Club. And so those are opportunities, I'm sure in at every high school in every community where you can get involved. And I know the Interact Club in Claremont has a really great program. They for when we have a senior citizen who has a yard that doesn't meet code requirements, a lot of weeds growing, and where our code enforcement officer comes in. If physically they're not able to address it, and financially they don't have the money to address it, the Interact Club can go to their home on a Saturday, and they bring out a team, and I've gone out with them. They've asked me to go with them, and we help clean up the person's yard and help them out. That's a really great program. So, and they've and a lot of these groups volunteer at different community events. So those if this is something that interests you, those are ways that you can engage yourself. The other thing is our city has been looking at more ways to provide potential internship opportunities for students. So if there's a subject matter that's of interest to you, finance, I just had a college student who's out for the summer who wanted just a 1 month unpaid internship, but just some experience in City Hall, and she was interested in finance. And she's studying economics. So I was able to get her an internship for the month of June with our finance department. We have, of course, if any of you are interested in, we were talking about building housing, we have a planning department that is responsible for reviewing plans for housing, for business, for commercial development. As a part of planning, we have an engineering department. If any of you are interested in engineering, maybe want to be a city engineer. City engineers are responsible for the design of our streets and our traffic signal systems and our utilities that run through town, and even reviewing some of the building design standards as they relate to the engineering design of some of those buildings. They review some of those things. Those are great opportunities to become engaged and to have some direct experience. And I mentioned to you too, I was even invited to volunteer at a legislator's office. And I know a lot of our legislators look for volunteers in their offices as well. So those are great opportunities if you're interested to seek. And if you need any help with that outside of the meeting, if any of you are interested, you can reach out to me and I'd be happy to try to see where we could connect you. Devin.
Hey, Mr. Mayor, I have one question, which is, how do you envision the city 5 to 10 years from now? What steps are you taking to get there?
We're trying to do our best to maintain, I think, what everybody appreciates about Claremont, the small town character. At the same time, our village has evolved significantly, and we're hoping that 10 years from now, our village is going to expand to the south of the railroad tracks. If any of you drive on Indian Hill there was the old Richard Hibbard Chevrolet that was there, and it's vacant now. And that's all slated for redevelopment to expand our village all the way down to Arrow Highway along Indian Hill there. And so, and the village has changed, because when I was your age, growing up in town, it was pretty much, there was only activity in the village Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then, in the evenings, it was dead. There was nothing going on. And now we have a vibrant village where we have restaurants open late. Some of the retail stores choose to remain open late and on weekends. And it's a destination spot. People come from all over the region because they enjoy the feel of Claremont and what Claremont has to offer. The fact that we don't have, we have some chain restaurants. We actually have a new chain that's going to be coming in, a place called Finney's. They have several around Southern California. But by and large, we have mostly small what we refer to as mom and pop businesses and restaurants, unique restaurants that are only found in Claremont. You can't find them elsewhere, and people love that about Claremont. So trying to preserve those things and maintain the relevance of our village as things change, as artificial intelligence moves in and has an impact on business and the way people do things. But I think people also like the feel of Claremont. A lot of folks move here from all different parts of the country because it reminds them of the Midwest, of of the New England area. They the trees and the old homes that we have. So again, trying to do our best to preserve that while keeping the community relevant is my hope for our community. So hopefully that answers your question. Natasha, you're muted again, Natasha. I'm sorry.
Okay, is this better?
There we go. Yes.
Okay. I was wondering, for those of us who might not be interested in going into politics, but just want to be, good citizens and knowledgeable voters, where can we go to find resources to just learn what's going on? I know personally, I don't really have any idea what's going on in the council most of the time. So where can we get good, reliable information about that?
Well, one thing, I can't speak for every community, although I think, where we are with technology these days, most of your cities probably videotape their city council meetings, and that's the case for ours. Ironically, we started videotaping our meetings the very first time I was mayor in 2009. I think it was July of 2000, just around July of 2009, I think was the very first meeting that we started recording and putting them on the cloud. And so you can go back as far as that and view any of our city council meetings in Claremont. And again, I imagine most of the cities have a similar system wherever you live. That's how if you don't have time to go to the meetings, and that's even better. If you have time, every so often it's nice to be able to go in and sit in and learn what it's all about. But if you don't have that ability, you usually have the ability to watch these meetings online. I think it's sad because there used to be a lot of community newspapers. Claremont still has the Claremont Courier that covers meetings a little bit, but most of your other communities, the Daily Bulletin is probably the only one that's kind of remaining, and even there they have to pick and choose because they can't cover every single council meeting in the area. So, that's really your best bet is either attending one or trying to watch them online. Aside from that, again, people who are not as political but care about their community, it's about getting involved. So, as I said, in high school, you've got Interact Club, you've got Key Club. But as you move on from high school, and I shouldn't even discount it because there are other organizations like we have Friends of the Claremont Public Library. There's an organization called Choose That Fit. If any of you are interested in any of these various causes, they're looking for volunteers of all ages. So you're not precluded, as high school or junior high school students. If you want to get involved in these things, I know there are opportunities for you. But certainly there are some organizations that are more geared for adult life, like your Rotary Club, your full-blown Rotary Club, your full-blown Kiwanis Club. I don't know if there's still Lions Clubs. But there's all kinds of service organizations and Claremont especially. We have so many. We have Claremont Educational Foundation, which does fundraising to support arts and some of the programs that aren't funded through state government for the school district, or to supplement some of those programs, as the case may be. So there's no matter what your interest is, there is an organization I know that's out there for you, and if you want to make the community a better place, that's how you would do it, is by getting involved. And I should give Alexander as another great example to all of you. He loves piano. He's involved in the Claremont Community School of Music, and he got involved in he was of course involved in Boy Scouts. He got his Eagle Scout, and for his project, he did a fundraiser for the Claremont Community School of Music. And then even beyond that, he set up his own fundraiser separate from the Boy Scouts, to just from his Eagle Scout project, just to fundraise for Claremont Community School of Music. So even beyond what's available to you, you can create your own, as Alexander has demonstrated. So those are just a few thoughts on that. Caleb.
I wanted to mention two questions that are here in the chat. The first one is, what are the flags on your left and right sides?
So, of course, we got the American flag and then the California flag. And this is the city of Claremont flag. I don't know if you can see that. That's our There you go. That's our city logo. So that's our city flag. So got all everything covered. The federal, state, and city.
All right, and
That's our city logo there on the wall. And these are actually pictures. I don't know if you can see these. I can move this up. So these are that was when I first got elected to city council. That was my first set of colleagues when I first was elected, and then kind of the next roughly decade, these were my colleagues. And then we're up to this group, and the only one who's not in that particular picture is Sal Medina, the older gentleman. Well, I don't know if this is mirroring or not, but the gentleman that's next to the American flag, that's Larry Schrader. He's no longer on council, and our new colleague is Sal Medina. But those are all my different colleagues over the years on city council.
thank you for sharing the meaning of those flags. And the next question is, as students, we care deeply about the well-being of families and children in the cities that we live in. So what do you see as the main healthcare challenges that our community faces today? And how can young people like all of us here get involved to help address or improve those issues?
The main healthcare issues? I mean, mental health is a real challenge right now in our society, and it's a tough one because we have a shortage of mental health workers for one, but even beyond that, the population that needs those services, sometimes it's very hard for those people to want to accept those services, and there are different cultural groups that have stigmas about mental health. Some of you may be aware of that. So it sometimes makes it very difficult to get people into to accept the services they need. And then, again, having a shortage of mental health workers, and it's a very it's a very demanding type of work. I mean, people who have severe mental illness can be a very challenging population to deal with, and over time, people can burn out from that. So I think a lot of folks, they may either choose early retirement, move to a different career, or change to another agency, to kind of get a reset. But that's a problem too, because even when you're trying to help somebody that has mental illness, building trust is a big part of that. And it's hard when somebody develops a relationship with a mental health worker and then they leave, and then to try to get them to go back again and build a relationship with someone new. Those are a lot of the challenges. And so that's probably one, ironically, we have a lot of other, challenges with cancer and other health issues in our society, certainly. But, these days with the increase in the unhoused population, and just within our society, I mean, you hear about these horrific incidents, where people end up doing performing some violent act, whether it's a gun or with a knife, or or just physically harming other people, and it's usually tied to mental illness. And so again, for those of you who have hopefully some of you have a passion in that, because there's definitely a need there. For those of you who are interested in the health sciences and helping other people, and possibly even in mental health, that there's a real need there in our society. And certainly those are things that I don't view AI being effective in addressing. Those are there has to be a personal touch to those types of services that you're not going to get through AI. So those are certainly probably career areas, if people are interested in those on this call, where you can probably do very well and make an important contribution to our society.
Thank you so much for that response. Now we only have about 5 minutes left, so if you have any questions, please remember to raise your hand. But there are 2 questions I'd like to ask in the chat. And the first one is, who was with you the most during childhood? And the second one is, did anyone inspire you to become mayor?
So in childhood, I mean, interestingly, I can share with you that my colleague Jennifer Stark, our vice mayor, was in first, second, third, and fourth grade with me. So that is kind of there are several friends that I had going back to elementary school who, thanks to Facebook and social media, I'm still in touch with. I think, my parents didn't have that blessing because they didn't have social media through their lives. So there are a lot of folks they grew up with that they lost contact with, but I feel very fortunate because of a significant number of people that I had the pleasure of knowing as a child. I still am connected with. But Jennifer Stark is perhaps one of the more gratifying things to now, at the time had no idea that, in the future we'd be serving on city council together. And I think that helps us because Jennifer and I have very different points of view on issues, and the fact that we have that deeper relationship, having grown up together, tends to transcend any differences we have from time to time in terms of our political views, which is a nice thing. These days, as you know, when people don't agree with somebody, they just tend to shut them off or defriend them, or they won't talk to them anymore. But I'm grateful that Jennifer and I can have a difference of opinion, and then we can go hiking together. And I think that is tied into the fact that we grew up together. As far as influencing me to become mayor, I didn't really have those aspirations. I hadn't really been thinking about government, but I guess I can just I guess I'll tell you my little story of how my first experience that kind of opened my mind to running for office. Where I live here on the very western edge of town, I mentioned there was no freeway before. I lived next to what's now the freeway and Baseline Road. Baseline didn't go by my house before. The freeway didn't go by. There was this way that you had to come down College Way and up Williams to connect back to Baseline by where I live. And so there was just a berry field out here. There was farming going on adjacent to my house, and there was a dirt road in front of my house. And we had a couple of stolen cars left in the road, a stolen purse. They annexed our area into the city. It was at one time unincorporated, but the city annexed it into the city proper. And when they did that, they didn't change out the street signs. They left the old county signs. So when we call the police, when we had the issues like the stolen cars and that, the police would come and they'd argue with us and say, well, you don't live in the city, you live in the county. And I would say, no, we live in the city. They just never changed the street signs. And I went to City Hall and I was trying to get the street signs changed out and to try to see if we could get no stopping signs posted in the road, because there was really nobody had any business stopping in there except, people causing trouble. And I got the runaround. So I finally, at one point, asked to speak to the mayor. So I left my information. The mayor called me. I explained the situation to her. And so she said she would look into it and get back to me. She called me back a few days later, and she was just very abrupt. And she just said, that's Caltrans right of way, Caltrans being the State Department of Transportation, because they own that right of way because they were going to be putting the freeway in. So she said, it's Caltrans right of way. The city can't do anything. And I'm late for a plane. And she just hung up the phone on me. And I thought, you know what? If that's the way they treat people, I can do a better job than that. So that's what kind of first planted the seed in my head about, running, because I was disrespected by an elected official. And so, again, part of my leadership growth is learning to be as patient as possible with people. Again, being firm, but not being disrespectful to them, because I learned from her that if you mistreat people, you create your own, enemies and opponents in politics. So, you sometimes can't give people the answer they want in every case, but you at least need to try to be as respectful as possible and do as much as you can to address a problem. I mean, I get a lot of, we have, some of you may or may not realize that we have some areas in Claremont that are in unincorporated LA County in the middle, kind of around Mountain Avenue. There's portions there that aren't in the city limits. They have a Claremont address, but they're actually unincorporated LA County. And they'll call me upset about an issue, and I can't address it because they're not in the city, and they don't really understand that process. But I don't just basically say, well, it's county and I can't do anything for you, and hang up the phone. What I do is I tell them, let me connect you with Supervisor Catherine Barger's office. the field representative there is Vicky. And then I'll call Vicky and I'll say, you have this constituent, Mr. Smith, and he has this issue, and here's his phone number. Can you connect with him? I go the extra mile to at least connect them with the person that can help them. I don't just say, forget it. There's nothing I can do. Goodbye. I try to make sure at least I leave them with somebody who can help them if I can. So again, that was my experience that led me even to run for office and to try to set a better example. And something that, again, another thing to keep in mind is that never forget where you came from and what motivated you. So that from that standpoint, I thank you for the question, Caleb, because you never should forget where you came from, why you started in the first place. If you do, then you probably don't belong there anymore. You need to always remember why you're there and never forget your purpose in serving people. So thank you for the question.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. It looks like it's about 7 p.m. So unless no one has any additional questions, I would like to present to you a certificate of appreciation. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with us all your valuable knowledge. And I'm definitely trying right now to be as presentative and give a great presentation, just like you said that you do most of the time in your earlier days before you became mayor. So thank you so much for sharing with us all those wonderful insights, and we definitely enjoyed having you here. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for this opportunity. And as I offered, if at any time outside of this meeting, any of you, would like to connect with me, if you're looking for ways to get more involved, I'm pretty sure Alexander, I know Caleb has my contact information, and I think Claire. So, don't hesitate to ask them to share my contact information with you, and I'll be happy to engage you.
Yeah, of course. So thank you so much. And this basically concludes our meeting tonight. So thank you everyone for coming to our workshop, and we will see everyone back here next week.